I'm about to rip open the curtain that's been hiding your real name for way too many years. This isn't some maybe or someday. It's already moving. Right now, this very week, even before you clicked on this video. The name other people slapped on you was never the name that heaven wrote down over your life. And now, that name is coming out into the light. Stick around until the end. Before this message finishes, you're going to get a simple, free protocol that helps you recognize, without a shred of doubt, what name has always been yours, even when nobody else was calling you by it. This isn't about changing who you are. It's about stopping the habit of answering to a name that was never yours to begin with. You know that moment early in the morning, standing in front of the bathroom mirror before anyone else in the house is awake. The house is dead quiet. The light outside is still the grayish dawn color, and you stare at yourself for 1 second longer than you normally would. It's not vanity. It's a question you've never said out loud. Who is this person I'm looking at, and why does it feel like she's wearing a coat that was never tailored for her? You know the smile that comes easy in public and vanishes the second the front door clicks shut behind you. That's not hypocrisy. That's the weight of keeping one version of yourself running all day long, while the real version sits in the back, waiting, silent, hoping for a safe moment to just breathe. You know that moment when you watch somebody else move ahead, get the recognition, step into the spot that seemed like it was meant for them, and you quietly ask yourself what you're doing wrong. That's not jealousy. That's the feeling of running a race with somebody else's name on your jersey, trying to reach a finish line that was never even designed for this borrowed version of you. You've tried to explain this to someone before. You opened your mouth, started forming the words, and when they finally came out, they sounded too small, too flimsy to carry what you were really feeling. So you quit trying, and you learned to keep that feeling locked up inside, the sensation of living a life that fits like a borrowed suit, never the right size, never really yours. This isn't being dramatic. This isn't some made-up problem. You seek. You dedicate yourself. You do everything right, and yet abundance never comes. And the worst part? You start wondering if you're doing something wrong, if you're being heard up above, if it's meant for you at all. It's not a lack of faith or worthiness. It's a spiritual blockage that ordinary prayer alone cannot break. The Miracle Journal unblocks this in 21 days with a spiritual protocol that works exactly where your prayer doesn't reach. Along with the journal, you'll also receive as a gift the prayer guide and the Psalms manual with the most powerful sacred practices and texts to deepen your transformation. To claim your version of the journal, tap the link in the comments right below this video. Suit, never the right size, never really yours. This isn't being dramatic. This isn't some made-up problem. It's the exact feeling of someone who has spent so long answering to a name that isn't theirs that they've forgotten what their original voice even sounded like. The one that existed before they learned to twist themselves into everyone else's expectations. You got good at anticipating what others wanted to hear. You learned to mold your posture, your tone, even the way you laugh, just to fit into a space that was never shaped with you in mind. And every single adjustment, no matter how small, pushed you one step further away from the face you had before you learned how to hide. You've probably lost count of how many times you've heard lines like, "You've always been this way," or "This is how we know you," spoken by people who've only ever saw the surface and never bothered to ask what was underneath. They didn't do it to be mean. They did it because it was easier to deal with the version they knew than to face the uncomfortable question of who you might actually be. And you, not wanting to let anyone down, kept shoving your life into the frame they had built for you. I need to tell you something before I go any further. You are not here by accident, and the fact that you're still standing after all this time, carrying a name that isn't yours, is already proof that there's something inside you that refuses to give up. That's not stubbornness. That's the real name pushing up from underneath the mask. If any of these scenes hit close to home, hit that like button right now. The like is your public amen. Heaven records what you confess out in the open, and this quiet confession, done with a tap of your finger, is already the first step toward taking off that borrowed coat. I have 3 promises for you, and all 3 of them are going to come true before this video ends. First promise: the confusion you feel about who you really are was never a lack of direction. It was a veil placed over you by the wrong voices. Voices that needed to be removed at the right time, and that time is now. Second promise: the protocol you're going to receive today reveals the spiritual name that was sealed over you before any human label was ever stuck on your forehead. Third promise: by the time this message is over, you'll be able to declare out loud who you are without asking anyone's permission, without waiting for approval from people who only ever met the masked version of you. I never confused you with what others said you were. While they called you by the name that was convenient for them, I always knew the real one. I wrote that name before any nickname, before any label, before anyone else's expectations tried to squeeze you into a mold way too small for what you actually are. Stay with me until the end, because this is a turning point. From the borrowed name to the sealed name. From confusion to clarity. From the mask to the identity. From waiting to revelation. That's what's about to happen to you. Close your eyes for a second, or just look away from the screen and let me show you the signs that are already present in your life right now, even if nobody ever taught you how to recognize them. The first sign is a growing discomfort whenever you step into the name or the role that other people expect from you. It's not ingratitude. It's not rebellion. It's your spirit refusing from the inside out a coat that never fit. You might still do the job. You can smile, deliver, answer to the old name. But inside, something clenches up every time that expectation gets placed on you. And that's not a character flaw. That's the real name knocking from underneath the disguise. Pay attention to how this discomfort tends to show up exactly when you're being praised for the old version. As if the compliment, instead of comforting you, just makes that borrowed coat pinch even tighter against your skin. The second sign is those recent moments of sudden silence in the middle of a conversation, like something inside you stops to listen to a different frequency. You were talking, listening, participating like normal, and then suddenly you went mute on the inside, like somebody turned down the volume of the world for 2 seconds. That's not being distracted. That's me turning down the external noise so I can speak louder inside you. A lot of times that silence hits right in the middle of a sentence you were about to say on autopilot, a sentence that belonged to the character, not to you, and the silence interrupts before the mask can finish speaking for you. The third sign is old memories coming back for no apparent reason, scenes from childhood before any label started defining you. A smell, a place, a feeling from back when you didn't yet know how to defend yourself from what other people called you. That's not empty nostalgia. That's heaven reopening the file of your original identity, showing you who you were before you learned how to hide. Sometimes it's a game you used to play by yourself, a way of dreaming that nobody else saw. A personality trait that got silenced way too early because it bothered someone who preferred you quieter, more predictable, easier to label. The fourth sign is a sudden pull toward a name, a word, or a symbol that keeps showing up in different contexts without you ever searching for it. You see it, hear it, run into the same thing in disconnected places, and you can't explain why. That's not coincidence. That's heaven signaling through repetition what your mind hasn't fully decoded yet. When it happens again in the next few days, don't brush it off as random chance. Write it down. Save it, because repetition is how heaven whispers loud to someone who is still learning how to listen. Before I show you the next sign, I need to warn you about something. This one is the hardest to hear. It's the sign that the enemy spent the most time trying to make you ignore, disguising it as exhaustion, disguising it as a crisis, disguising it as a rough patch that will pass on its own. The fifth sign, the heaviest one of all, is the feeling. Even on productive days, even when everything looks like it's working on the outside, that you're playing a character instead of living your own life. You check off the to-do list. You deliver what needs to be delivered, and still, Something inside you whispers that this isn't the real life. This isn't the real name. That there's another version of you waiting to be lived for real. The enemy is going to call this burnout. He's going to call it instability. He's going to call it ingratitude for not being satisfied with what you already have. But I'm telling you what it really is. It's the exact breaking point between the mask and the real identity. It's the moment when the stitching that held the fake name in place finally starts to come apart. If any of these signs hit you, type the word free in the comments right now. You don't have to explain. You don't have to tell the whole story. Just type free and leave that mark, because heaven reads what you confess out in public. Close your eyes for a second. Take a deep breath. What I'm about to show you won't work if your attention is split. There's a man in the old story who spent an entire night alone, wrestling with a presence he couldn't fully identify. His name was Jacob, and he'd been carrying around for years the weight of a name that meant deceiver, usurper, the one who takes someone else's place. That's what he was called from birth, and that's how he lived, running, negotiating, disguising who he really was just to survive his circumstances. He tricked his own father to get a blessing he wasn't sure he deserved. He ran from his own brother out of fear of revenge. He spent years serving a father-in-law who cheated him right back, as if the universe was determined to hand back to him in the same currency the name he himself had agreed to carry. That night, on the bank of a river called the Jabbok, alone, with no audience, nobody to impress or negotiate with, he fought until dawn, refusing to let go. Even though he was wounded, even though he was exhausted, even though his hip was dislocated from the struggle, saying, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." Notice he didn't ask for the fight to stop. He asked for the fight to mean something. And when the sun came up, he didn't walk away with the same name he came in with. He received the name Israel, which means the one who struggled with God and prevailed. That nighttime fight wasn't punishment. It was the exact moment when the old name was being exchanged for the name that had always been reserved for him, and he limped for the rest of his life as a physical reminder that the night really happened, that the new name had a cost, but it also had proof. There's also in nature a transformation that most people get wrong. The butterfly, inside the chrysalis, doesn't just change outfits and fly off. First, the caterpillar releases enzymes that dissolve almost its entire body into a gooey, unrecognizable mass with no defined shape, a process so radical that if you opened the chrysalis halfway through, you wouldn't find either a caterpillar or a butterfly, just a confusing liquid that looks like the end of everything, the complete failure of transformation. But that dissolution isn't destruction. It's the only possible path for the new form, which was already coded inside her from the beginning, from back when she was still a caterpillar crawling on the ground, to finally show up. Inside that formless goo, there are tiny groups of cells that already carry the blueprint of the wing, the antenna, the color that's coming. They were there the whole time, waiting for the old form to finish falling apart so they could organize themselves. You are exactly in that phase. Both Jacob and the butterfly had to go through a period of unrecognizability before the real name, the real form, could appear. The chaos you feel right now is not disintegration. It's not you falling apart. It's your original identity being slowly released from the shape that has been hiding it for so long. If you've ever felt like Jacob fighting alone all night, or like a butterfly stuck in the middle of the transformation, with no old form and no new form yet, type in the comments the word Israel, or type chrysalis butterfly. Pick the one that spoke to you the most. Let me pause for a full minute before I move on. First fact: you just recognized specific scenes from a life lived with a borrowed name. The early mirror, the smile that hides, the silent comparison, the words that came out too small. Second fact: these signs that I showed you have been around for a while. You just never had the right interpretation for them. Third fact: the double story of Jacob and the butterfly confirmed something you needed to hear. that every real transition of identity requires a phase of unrecognizability before the revelation. Fourth fact, you made it here, to this exact point in this video, without giving up. And that by itself is already evidence of the new name working in you even before it's fully revealed. And here is who you are inside all of this. I saw the time when you tried to identify yourself by your achievements, trying to prove your worth through what you produced. I saw the time when you tried to identify yourself by other people's approval, shaping every move to please people who might never see you for real. I saw the time when you tried to identify yourself by the roles you took on because that's what was expected of you. And I need you to hear this clearly. None of that was ever the real name that I recorded over you. Not a single piece of that was your true name. What you're about to hear right now is not a human title. It's what I call you when I talk to heaven about you, the chosen one, before the mask. That's the first identity, and it's a done deal. I saw you before any label, any nickname, anyone else's expectations shaped who you were supposed to be. I saw you in the exact moment when you still hadn't learned how to hide, when your face said everything without a filter, when your name hadn't yet been replaced for other people's convenience. I saw you before someone said you were too much, or not enough, or different than expected. I saw you before any comparison was made, before any expectation was glued onto your forehead like it was part of who you are. And because I saw that original version of you, that identity never stopped existing. It just got covered, like a seed under the soil, alive, waiting for the right season. What this authorizes is simple and definite. You can stop explaining yourself to people who only ever met the masked version of you. You don't owe anything to anyone who never saw your real face, and you don't have to spend any more energy trying to prove to those people a version they were never ready to see. Bearer of the sealed name. That's the second identity, and it's also a done deal. I witnessed every attempt you made to fit into names that weren't yours. Every time you forced a smile to squeeze into a borrowed mold. Every time you answered to a title that didn't represent who you really are. I saw you try on the name your family expected, the name your job demanded, the name a whole relationship forced you to use just to keep the peace. And while you were trying to squeeze into each one of those molds, I kept your real name intact the whole time. Sealed, protected, waiting for the right moment to be opened, like a letter written before your birth and delivered exactly when you would be ready to read it. What this authorizes is that you can start as early as today to answer internally by the spiritual name that I always knew was yours, even before any external confirmation appears. You don't need anyone to validate it for it to already be true, because the validation already happened in heaven long before it happened on earth. Israel of your own time, the one who fought and didn't let go. That's the third identity, and it's also a done deal. I saw every night of your internal struggle against the confusion of identity. Every early morning when you questioned who you really are. Every moment when doubt tried to convince you to give up searching for the real name and just settle for the easy name that everybody already knew. I saw you cry without knowing exactly why, and I knew. It was the old name resisting leaving, and the new name insisting on being born. And I recognized that whole struggle as persistence, never as weakness. You fought the whole night, like Jacob fought, and you didn't let go, even when it seemed easier to just stop asking who you were. What this authorizes is that you can move forward now, without waiting for everyone to understand or approve of the new form that is emerging in you. Their approval was never a condition for your progress, and it never will be. Type in the comments the name of the identity that just reached you. The chosen one, before the mask, bearer of the sealed name, or Israel of your own time. And if this message is touching you in a way you've never felt before, subscribe to the channel right now, because there are more revelations coming, and heaven doesn't waste seeds on ground that isn't being cultivated. I have a protocol for you, and it's called the Sealed Identity Protocol. It's simple, it's free, and it exists to help you lock in what you just received. Step 1. Grab a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and write down the name or the label that others use to define you over the years. It could be a nickname, a role that was forced on you, a phrase someone said about you that you ended up accepting as truth. Write that name down and then declare out loud, alone, with no audience. This name is not the end of my story. Step 2. In silence, without forcing an immediate answer, ask the spirit what the real name is. Don't demand that the answer arrives fully formed in seconds. Just open up an internal space, like opening a window and waiting for the wind to come in on its own time. Sometimes the answer comes in one word. Sometimes it comes as a feeling of peace. Sometimes it takes days, piece by piece. The important thing is to open the space, not to control the outcome. Step 3. Repeat for 3 consecutive days at the same time a short phrase claiming the new name. It can be as simple as, I am who God says I am. Repeat it even if you don't fully understand the complete meaning yet. The repetition isn't mechanical. It's a way to let this truth move from your mind into your body, from a thought into a lived identity. The sign that the protocol is working is not euphoria. It's not an explosion of emotion, not some instant flashy revelation like in the movies. It's quietness, a peace that doesn't depend on anyone confirming who you are, a calm that settles in even when the external circumstances haven't visibly changed at all. You'll notice that arguments that used to throw you off balance, comments that used to cut deep, comparisons that used to destabilize you for days, start losing their power faster. Not because you became numb, but because the new name no longer depends on what was trying to hurt you. If you are receiving this protocol, type the word received in the comments right now, because this word written in public is a seal over what you just decided to do. In the next 72 hours, 3 things will be launched against you, not as a possibility, as a certainty. And I need you to recognize each one of them before they arrive, because what is named in advance loses half of its power to deceive you. The first tactic is called old label. It shows up disguised as humility, insisting through an internal voice or other people's comments that you keep seeing yourself exactly the way you've always been seen by others. It will tell you that accepting the new name is pride, that it's better to stay in the familiar place, that claiming who you really are would be arrogance dressed up as faith. That's not humility. That's the attempt to keep you locked into a small version of yourself. The second tactic is called identity comparison. It shows up disguised as inspiration, making you measure your new name by the way someone else's calling manifested. You'll see someone who seems to have received the revelation faster, more spectacularly, more visibly, and the temptation will be to doubt your own revelation because it didn't come the same way. Don't fall for it. Your name was never meant to be the same as anyone else's name. The third tactic is called rush for external confirmation. It shows up disguised as discernment, demanding visible proof before you internally accept who you already are. It will tell you to wait for someone else to call you by the new name before you start living it yourself, to check social media for a sign, to wait for a comment, a message, an external acknowledgement that confirms what only heaven needed to confirm. But I already told you, the sealed name does not depend on human applause to be true. It was already true before any human witness existed to see it. And there is still an internal enemy, quieter than the other 3. It is the voice itself that whispers inside you, disguised as maturity, disguised as rationality. This is all in your head. You're still who you've always been. Nothing really changed. This voice tries to invalidate the revelation before it has time to take root. Recognize that voice. It's not wisdom. It's fear wearing a mask of common sense. Type the word protected in the comments right now. The decree has been sealed, and none of these 3 tactics, nor the internal voice trying to disqualify you, will have the final word on who you are. Now put your hand over your chest. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. 3 times, without rushing. There are burdens you carried all the way here, and this is the moment to release them. The first burden is the old name that no longer represents you, the one that others stuck on you without asking if it fit. The second burden is the need for approval to exist as who you really are, that invisible demand that someone has to confirm your identity before it becomes valid. The third burden is the rush to prove the new identity before the right time, that anxiety to show others who you've become before you yourself have fully absorbed it. Release these three burdens now, out loud if you can, or in silence if you're in a place that requires quiet. I saw the early mirror before anyone else woke up. I saw that extra second you spent looking at your own face, asking who was really there behind those tired eyes. I didn't look away in that moment. I was there, seeing, keeping, knowing what you still didn't know about yourself. I saw you smile in public and hurt at home. I saw the door close behind you and the smile crumble in the same instant, and I saw the weight you carried alone because you thought nobody could handle the real version. You were never as alone as you thought. I was right there, in the silent living room, in the dark bedroom, witnessing every night when you wanted to give up and didn't. I saw you try to explain and the words came out too small for what you felt. I saw the frustration of keeping silent what couldn't fit into short sentences, the loneliness of having something huge to say and no small enough way to say it to the people nearby. And I tell you now, you don't have to explain anymore to fit in. You just need to start living the name I always knew was yours. I saw every time you watched others move ahead and quietly asked yourself what you were doing wrong. And I need you to hear this with all the clarity there is in me. You were never behind. You were being prepared at a pace that only I knew, for a name that requires exactly the time it took to form. What looked like delay was depth being built, not incompetence being exposed. What is yours is already sealed by heaven, and no one, no voice, no old label, no comparison has the authority to undo what I have already declared over you. I cover your mind now so that thoughts of doubt lose strength with each passing day. I cover your relationships now so that the right people begin to recognize you by the new name, and the voices that only knew how to call you by the old name lose space in your life. I cover the timing of your revelation so that it is neither rushed by anxiety nor delayed by fear, but happens exactly on schedule. I cover this area of your identity so that what was confused becomes clear and what was hidden becomes visible. I sent you to live this name, not to carry it in secret. Go. Say it out loud right now. I am who God says I am, not what they called me. Say it again with more strength. I am who God says I am, not what they called me. It is done. What was delivered here has been delivered. If you made it to this point, type the word done in the comments right now, because this word written in public seals publicly what happened inside you during this message. And if there is someone in your life who is also living with a borrowed name, someone who smiles in public and hurts at home, someone who has already tried to explain and the words came out too small, send this video right now to that specific person, not to some random group, to her by name now. Maybe this message is the first time someone tells her that the name they called her was never the final name. And if that person wants to go deeper, to go further in this identity journey with more practical guidance, the link is in the first comment, waiting for her the same way this video waited for you. In the next video, I'm going to show you what to do when the people around you still insist on calling you by the old name, even after you've already received the new one. Don't miss it, because this is the part that most people skip, and it's exactly where the new identity gets lost if nobody teaches you how to protect it. It is done. You are not the same person you were when this message began. You seek. You dedicate yourself. You do everything right, and yet abundance never comes. And the worst part, you start wondering if you're doing something wrong, if you're being heard up above, if it's meant for you at all. It's not a lack of faith or worthiness. It's a spiritual blockage that ordinary prayer alone cannot break. The Miracle Journal unblocks this in 21 days with a spiritual protocol that works exactly where your prayer doesn't reach. Along with the journal, you'll also receive as a gift the prayer guide and the Psalms manual with the most powerful sacred practices and texts to deepen your transformation. To claim your version of the journal, tap the link in the comments right below this video.